They have no intention of allowing Syria to exist as a functioning nation state. That this will never happen, and so they're quite happy with everybody killing each other. What they want to do with Syria is maintain it as destabilized, no integrated air defense, because they want the U.S. and Israel to be able to fly across its airspace with impunity.
Right.
To say go strike Iran, for example. I mean, that was a huge, that Which Path to Persia paper from all the way back in 2009 from the Brookings Institution, they said that was a huge problem. Whose airspace are Israeli planes going to go through? Now that problem has been solved. It will be Syria's airspace at a minimum. They will also use it the same way they were using Idlib, but now they have the whole country essentially. They will transform this into a hub for extremism. President Trump just approved of holding thousands of terrorists, including thousands of Uyghur extremists, we remember the U.S. accusing China of genocide against the Uyghurs. They don't like them just because they've lived there for centuries, side by side with the rest of China. One day, President Xi Jinping just woke up and decided, I don't like the Uyghurs anymore, even though their language is on all of our money. Like if you look at Chinese paper money, the Uyghur language is on it, along with Tibetan language and a whole number of others, because they're quite okay with all these ethnic groups. So the actual problem was the U.S. doing inside China what it had done in Syria, Libya, all of these other countries. They radicalized them with help from Turkey and Saudi Arabia. And then the radicalization turned into violence. The violence spread across Xinjiang in the West. Then it spread across the rest of China, then the rest of Asia. And then they had thousands of these extremists. China was trying to de-radicalize, deprogram them, reintegrate them into Chinese society. Those that they just left and they went to Syria. They came through Southeast Asia, and they created all kinds of problems here in Thailand. There was a bombing, killed 20 people right in the center of Bangkok. And then they went to Turkey, and then Turkey and the CIA set them up with weapons and training and sent them into Syria and to join the cause. Yeah, there he is.
Outrageous. Yeah, a good-looking guy, strong pants.
I mean, and just think about Trump supporters twisting themselves up into pretzels, trying to justify all of this. And these are the same people who are like chronic racists and Islamophobes and the Muslims are taking over, and yet and Islam is the problem, and yet there's your president that you voted shaking hands with a literal terrorist. And this was always going to happen. This wasn't some conundrum that President Trump faced and he's trying to be pragmatic. The U.S. created these extremists. It wasn't Islam. The U.S. did it together with Saudi Arabia and other countries. They deliberately radicalized them because ordinarily Muslims are not radical. Believe it or not, there's over 1 billion Muslims around the world. If even 1% of them were extremists, they would have the largest army in the world. They would have taken over already. So it's something that people have been manipulated, again, across media, across information space. They've been convinced that this is a problem and the U.S. is the solution, when the U.S. actually deliberately created this problem specifically to undermine China. They did the same thing in Chechnya to undermine the nascent Russian Federation after the Cold War. They're doing it here in the Deep South in Thailand. They were using race and ethnicity and religion in neighboring Myanmar. That's also here in Southeast Asia. And again, Libya, Syria, all of these countries, they use these radicalized terrorists to undermine and destabilize and overthrow these countries. And I show the 2007 Seymour Hersh article titled "The Redirection" in the New Yorker. And he warned about all of this. And this started under Bush Jr. It continued all throughout 8 years of Obama, 4 years of Trump, 4 years of Biden. And here's President Trump. He is like putting the birthday candles on top of this layered cake. And by shaking hands with these terrorists, the U.S. created and used to overthrow all of these countries. And by the way, they did this in Libya with Al-Qaeda's franchise, I guess you could call them, in Libya, are called the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. And then they took all of those terrorists, once they overthrew the government there and completely destroyed everything, they literally took them and brought them to Turkey to then go inside Syria and continue there. So this is what I'm warning people about. Now they've accomplished this in Syria. There's no peace. There's no stability. The U.S. is going to use this to further radicalize these people and then deploy them all across Eurasia, Africa, probably even Europe and the United States, because remember, inside the minds of a lot of Trump supporters, Islam is the problem, but all these terrorists carrying out deadly attacks like the Manchester, do people remember the Manchester attack in the United Kingdom? That the people that did that were Libyan Islamic Fighting Group fighters. They came from the US, British, French, created, backed, armed, trained terrorists that they used to overthrow the Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. This is what they do. And then they bring these terrorists in. They know they're dangerous. They don't detain them. They just let them walk around it at a minimum as ticking time bombs, if not help them from A to Z to carry out these attacks, because they know it will divide and distract their own population. This allows them to continue this agenda. It's just like you were saying. They come into Africa saying, we're here to help with the terrorists. They're the ones that are behind the terrorists in the first place. So this is exactly what they're doing back home in the West. So you want to point your finger at someone who's destroying Western civilization, point it at your leaders. Don't point it at some group that is fleeing from their country because your country destroyed it. Point it at your leaders. But that would actually take courage and guts to stand up to your government. It's much easier to point at brown people and say, they're the problem. I'm going to vote for this guy or that guy. He'll solve it. And, it's a lot easier to do that than to actually confront your own government.
Yeah,
look at the truth. They don't. Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you bring up Libya. Libya is a great example. You have the U.S. effectively backing terrorists, and then turn around and say, hey, Gaddafi is fighting these terrorists who we call civilians, and then go after a bombing raid in order to get rid of Gaddafi. Same thing with Syria, right? It's like, oh, they're the Free Syrian Army. These people were terrorists. like the naming is fantastic. Leave no child behind, or enhanced interrogation, which is really torture. It's like you just change the name and the media just runs with it, right? You have a compliant media that goes with it. If you remember when Hillary Clinton sent the email that said something to the effect of Saudi Arabia is spreading Wahhabism all throughout the region, it didn't stop Hillary Clinton from taking money from that same Saudi Arabia. Or when Jake Sullivan said Al-Qaeda is with us. Okay, is there a different Al-Qaeda that I don't, that I'm unaware of? We were obviously paying these people. Who do we think Obama was paying the billions of dollars to use in Syria? They weren't, angels. Like, they weren't these just great upstanding people. That wasn't the way it worked. Hell, even the Mujahideen. Like, we use these radicals, whether it's right wingers in Ukraine, whether it's kill squads in South America. There's like a type that's, a guy thick neck with a gun, or that's willing to use a gun, and we just like, here's money, go do work.
Yes.
So yeah, it's unfortunate. It really is.